Is it true that 90% of China is atheist? Is it true that Chinese people eat anything besides human? I heard that such contents about Islam are blocked by the Chinese government.
At first they were shocked, like, why are you doing this? Who taught you this? Like, what is this?
Are you a wanted man in China? Isa brother, can you please introduce yourself to us?
Sure, Bismillah. My name's Isa, and I'm from China, from a northwestern province called Gansu. And I was born in a Muslim family, but not a practicing one. So I didn't know much about Islam until I went to university, where I met many Muslim friends from different countries. And that's where I started re-educating myself about Islam. And that's where I started practicing slowly.
I haven't known that you were Muslim. And I was going to ask you, how did you first hear about Islam?
They're Muslims, but they don't pray, they don't read the Qur'an. They don't know much, actually, about the pillars of Islam or the beliefs of Islam. And nobody ever talked to me about how to live as a Muslim. Basically, in my family, I was made to feel that there was no difference between a Muslim and a non-Muslim, except we don't eat pork. Yeah, so I started learning about Islam in university, primarily, and convey what I learned to my family, and then later to a wider audience, to my friends, to my colleagues.
How did your family react to this life-changing decision?
At first, they were shocked, and...
was it a good shock or a bad shock?
My general attitude towards life, it becomes more motivated and more positive. So they started appreciating it and even eventually supporting it, alhamdulillah, especially my mom. The change in her, I think, is even more intense than me. Like, she was also not practicing at all. But after witnessing this change in me, she really appreciated it. And then she started changing herself too, with a very fast pace, with a very fast progression. So I'm very grateful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that my family is also, followed the path.
What are the results of your search engine in China when you type Islam?
If you search Islam, I think first you would find the Islamic Association of many provinces or cities, their official website. Because in every province, every city, there's a so-called 伊斯兰教协会, like the Islamic Association, which is an official agency appointed by the government. Eventually, if you go to like maybe the 10th page or later, you would find some questions and answers about Islam by people, because in China we also have websites like Quora, Q&A websites. People will ask questions and people will answer questions. So there you would find people asking very random questions about Islam, and people giving very random answers about Islam, because most of the people who answer are not Muslims. So yeah, I think you wouldn't find much like very direct dawah things if you search Islam.
How were the Chinese people introduced to Islam throughout the history?
I have a video about that on my YouTube channel. So basically, China was one of the first countries that Islam reached. So basically, there are different opinions about when Islam first reached China, but it's generally in the area of about 10 years after the Prophet ﷺ passed away. So it's very early. And some historians even believe before he passed away, ﷺ, there were already some Sahaba as messengers that were sent to the East, sent to China in the 7th century, earlier than many Muslim countries nowadays. And how it was introduced in the beginning, I think there were official messengers from the Muslims to introduce Islam, but they were not the ones who made the real influence, because they were few. One or two, maybe just a few people would go and visit the emperor, and it didn't make a big impact. The big impact was actually from Arab merchants who came in large numbers to the southern part of China for business. But then, as you know, this is the Muslims, wherever they go, they carry Islam with them, right? So they go to China, but they have to pray. So they, find a place and make it a masjid. They pray together. And in their business dealings, they have the akhlaq of Islam. They're honest, they're cheerful, they're respectful, etc. So at first, they had their own communities. Muslim communities, mostly foreigners. But then gradually they influenced the Chinese people around them as well. And then there started to be Chinese Muslims. So actually Islam started in China from the south, earlier than the north. After some time there were there were merchants from the north as well, from the Silk Road, the famous Silk Road. But that was much less in number because traveling on road in that time was much more difficult than traveling on the sea. So there were more Muslims in the south, and the impact was mostly from merchants in their business dealings and in their lifestyle. So that's how Islam started in China.
Is it true that Chinese people eat anything besides human?
I think this is like a popular impression that foreigners have about Chinese people. Even in Hong Kong, many of my Muslim friends say that, oh, you guys eat everything, right? You guys eat like cockroaches and ants, right? And I was like, ew! I can't even imagine that. So maybe like there are in some areas, I think in southern part especially, people tend to be more liberal in their choice of food. They may eat things that others feel weird, especially in the Canton province, I think. So it's a regional thing. It's not universal in China.
For us, the Chinese people look like each other very much. Do Chinese people feel the same for us?
I think so. But it depends on which country, because like Turkey is a special case. Because, I mean, Turkey, you know, it covers a part of Asia and a part of Europe. And because of its history, you know, as a big empire, it has citizens from different races, different ethnicities. But if you're talking about a country like, let's say, Uzbekistan, then we see all of them are same. And all of them are actually similar to Chinese in our eyes. So I think, and also I think some Chinese people can't differentiate between Arabs. Like, you know, Syrians and Palestinians to them just look the same.
Is it true that 90% of China is atheist? I just can't believe this. Please explain this to me.
It's almost impossible to really measure this because there are so many people. But what we know from interacting with the Chinese people is that most people would not identify themselves with a specific organized religion, but everyone has some sort of belief. They have certain spiritual beliefs, and they believe in consequences to their actions, and they believe in, sometimes they say 积点阴德, like reserve some how to say, hidden, like a ghaib, you know, hidden luck for yourself. Yeah, and you do some good things so that when you're in trouble, this hidden luck will help you. So people have beliefs, but not very specific religions. In terms of whether 90% of the people are atheist, I would say no. I think 90% of the people are not sure whether there's a God. They are more in a confused state rather than, because an atheist is someone who clearly states, I don't believe there's a God. But if you ask Chinese people, do you think there's a God? Most of them, I believe, will say, I'm not sure. Or I never thought about it. Or maybe. So the people that I've interacted, most of them say maybe. But many of them think it's none of my business. Maybe there's a God, maybe there's not a God. It doesn't really matter to me. Education does play a role because our education is a strictly atheist education. It's very clear that, you know, the regime doesn't believe there's a God.
You're producing Islamic content videos. Are you a wanted man in China?
I think, of course, when you do these things, they would pay attention to you. You know, the security people, they will pay attention to you. And we have this term in China that we use humorously called inviting you for tea. Like, you know, if they want to get to know more about you for security reasons, they will invite you for tea. So I've been invited for tea in China. They will ask you, what have you been up to? What are you doing? Why are you doing this? Who told you to do this? And are you in contact with any foreign organizations?
We would like to know about that conversations, if you tell us.
Personally, all of these people I met are respectful people. When they talk with me, they are polite and they're respectful. So they know that I'm Muslim and I don't hide at all about my passion for Islam and my desire to spread Islam. And they respect that. What they are most, I think, you know, it's a general rule for any big country that the most important thing is the stability of the authority, is the stability of the regime. So as long as they can make sure that you're not threatening the regime, like you're not running for president or anything, like you don't want power in this country, then they don't mind you that much. So in this conversation, they asked me about many things, like what's your plan in the future? Where did you study your Islamic knowledge? And For example, once I went to Morocco just for a cultural trip, and then I came back and they met me and they asked me like, why did you go to Morocco? What did you do there? Who did you meet there? They are very threatened by any form of contact with foreign countries or organizations.
I heard that such contents about Islam are blocked by the Chinese government.
Some of them are deleted, some of them are censored, but I would say that's a small portion, maybe 10 to 20%. 80% of the content are still up, and Bismillah, hope they stay up.
For example, you are in China and you have your computer with you.
Yeah.
And you have your own YouTube. What was that called?
It's called Bilibili, I think.
Bilibili. Yeah. When you type, for example, Nouman Ali Khan to that site, can you see Nouman Ali Khan?
I've never tried, but I'm aware that there are many translated videos of Nouman Ali Khan circulating among Chinese Muslims.
Do you feel freedom in China?
In terms of freedom of speech, I would often feel restricted, and I would feel frustrated about these restrictions, such as I told you, some of my articles and videos, this content will be censored or deleted, which I dedicated a lot of effort to, and which I find it to be beneficial to people, but for a reason that I don't know for sure, they are deleted or censored. Of course, this frustrates me.
In some points, you're criticizing the system. Do you think the officials will watch this video and ask for a tea?
I was telling my wife that there's this Turkish guy who wants to interview me. I think this is where I get arrested for. I told her that. So like, yeah, sometimes I do have concerns. 99% of the time, I say what I think. Only 1% of the time when it comes to very sensitive issues. For example, the issue of a specific area in China and a specific ethnicity, and you know what I'm talking about. So this is a very sensitive topic, and I tend to avoid it because I'm afraid it might bring trouble to me.
For example, how do you give dawah right now to Chinese people?
One way is, as I mentioned, I have a WeChat official account, which is a social media platform that has currently close to 60,000 subscribers, and I have articles, audios, videos about Islam, and as I said, most of them can circulate freely. That's one way, through social media, and also through offline, gatherings, small gatherings, not like a very public, like a conference or anything like that in North America, because that would invite a lot of trouble. But we have small family gatherings, and it's very common in China now. So like, the father of a family would invite many other families, a few other families, to come for a meal. And
Chinese Muslims perform their prayer freely? Did you have any hardships regarding this matter?
In my area, there was no problem praying in a masjid whenever you want. It's open all day. And people pray in Jama'ah, people pray Jum'ah, people pray Eid on the street, actually. There's a city in Qinghai province, and they have made documentary about this. On Eid, there are like hundreds of thousands of Muslims. I think tens of thousands of Muslims are praying together, and of course the masjid is not enough. So the local traffic police would actually block the road, reserve one whole road for Muslims to pray. And it happened every year. They have documentaries about this. So in terms of prayer, I felt there's sufficient freedom for us to do what we have to do. But now I think in many masajid, they prevent people under the age of 18 to enter, which I feel is very weird. But I think not all masajid, some masajid, they prevent people under the age of 18 to enter. And as I mentioned earlier, Communist Party members cannot enter masajid because they are supposed to be atheist and don't believe any religion.
In Islam, we pray, we fast during Ramadan. Did any of them seem difficult to you at first?
It was not difficult in university because we had a prayer room in the university. So at first I was not praying regularly. And then one day, I think it's a sudden thought to me. I was, just motivated to feel that, wait a minute, like Allah commanded Muslims to pray 5 times a day. And why am I not praying five times a day? It's a normal thought. But all of a sudden I said, you know what, starting from tomorrow, from Fajr, I will start praying 5 times a day. I'll see what's the big deal. I'll see if I can do it or not. I just want to experiment. And then the next day, I woke up early, I prayed Fajr. And then I prayed all the 5 daily prayers. And I was like, it can be done. And it didn't really, affect my life that much. It didn't really make me busier or anything. It didn't take much of my time. So I started doing this regularly. And once I started doing this regularly, everything else seemed to have become easy. So other ibadat, other kinds of worship, like fasting, like learning Islamic knowledge, trying to recite the Qur'an, all of the other things seemed to start to become easy once I started praying regularly. So no wonder Allah Azza wa Jalla says, you know, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu sta'inu bis-sabri was-salah. You know, seek help from patience and prayer. Once you start praying, help comes to you in your other actions, in your other kinds of work. So yeah, nothing was particularly difficult for me, alhamdulillah. I think things just happened naturally.
Did you have some bad habits like drinking alcohol and dating?
So when I first learned that Muslims shouldn't date or shouldn't have boyfriend and girlfriend, I was actually shocked. I was like, what? How can that be possible? How can people get married without, you know, dating, without going out and learning about each other? So at first, that was sort of a hard one for me to accept. And I used to have long conversations with my Muslim friends about this point. But then, you know, while I have these conversations and also reflect within myself and also learn more, you know, about this topic and gather more knowledge, eventually I accepted. And there was a funny experience. Like one day I was lying on bed and I was thinking to myself, like, you know what? I don't think it's that bad to have a relationship. You know, I'm praying, I fast, I don't drink alcohol, and I just have a relationship. It's not so bad. I'm thinking to myself, maybe I can be a more liberal Muslim. You know, I practice all of these things, but I will have a relationship. And then I fell asleep right after that thought. And then I heard a voice. I actually heard a voice saying to me in English. Weirdly enough, my mother tongue is Chinese, but I heard a voice in English. No, you can't. Like, no, you can't have a relationship while being a practicing Muslim. And then that was funny to me. Maybe it's just a dream or something. It's not necessarily a miracle or a wahi, like, you know, revelation. But that basically pushed me to think more about this topic. And then eventually, you know, logically, you know, rationally, and also just the fact that we should submit once there's enough evidence to suggest that you shouldn't do something, even if you emotionally don't want to accept it. It is of our duty as a Muslim to submit, to accept, and even if it's against your wishes, even if it's against your feelings. So I was harsh on myself, and I accepted it, and I just convinced myself not to have such relationships, and eventually it worked out well. You know, it's a form of protection.
Are you married right now?
Yes, alhamdulillah, I'm married.
MashaAllah. How is that possible to get married without knowing each other? If it is haram to date?
Well, I did meet my potential marriage candidate just once. And for a few days, like, you know, consecutively, I met her and we talked about the important things about marriage. Like, you know, how many kids you want to have. That's an important question. And would you like to work? You know, what's your goal? And what's the most important thing to you in terms of this life? You know, of course, we all want you know, Jannah and success in the Akhirah. But in terms of this life, what is your goal? What is your arrangement for yourself? All of these important questions, we exchanged our thoughts. And then once it's suitable, you just decide, you know, you have some trust towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because you can never be entirely certain. So, you know, فَإِذَا عَزَمْتَ فَتَوَكَّلْ عَلَى اللَّهِ. Once you've made up your mind, then trust Allah, because there will always be something uncertain. But once you've made up your mind, trust Allah. And then pray Salatul Istikhara, of course. And then just make that decision and know that in every marriage there are problems. And in every marriage there are advantages. There's no marriage that will definitely, absolutely work perfectly. And there's no marriage that is definitely a disaster. It's all about how you handle it, how you manage it, you know, how you protect it and how you construct it. So it was a rational decision after knowing this, well, now she's my wife, but at the time, this sister. And then we just decided to get married. And so far, so good. Alhamdulillah.
Is that true that Chinese government doesn't let people to have so many kids?
Like in my generation, in the decade that I was born, 1990s, there was a policy called one-child policy. So every family can only have one child to control the population growth. And then after, I think, about a decade ago, they removed this policy and they made it two children policy. So now people can have 2 kids, and I think they changed it again to 3, because now we face a bigger problem than population growth, which is the aging problem. There are more old people than young people in society.
Why did you feel the need to make a research about Islam?
It's very normal when people grow to a certain age of mental maturity. He will start thinking about some very basic but very hard questions, like what's the purpose of life? Why am I even alive? What's going to happen after I die? These very basic, but also very difficult questions, right? If you help others, you will die, they will die. What's the point of helping them? Everyone dies eventually. So this really frustrated me in the beginning, and I started reading about many different religions and spiritual schools. The reason why I started all of this research is questions, which I believe all people have at one stage in their life.
So before you read Quran, you read some other books, right?
Yes.
Am I right?
Yes.
What was that books and what was your reaction?
So for Buddhism, I read in Chinese 六祖坛经. It's actually the collection of sayings of a very famous Buddhist monk from southern part of China in history. And when I read about it, I felt like there is tremendous wisdom. And his philosophy is mostly about, you can say, introspection, which is looking into yourself, looking at your nafs in our language, looking at your ego and restraining your ego. And he basically said that the whole world is a reflection of your own ego, of your inner state. So he said, 凡所有相皆是虚妄. Anything that has an appearance is all fake. Like the real things, the essence of things don't have appearances. You know, it doesn't really talk about what's going to happen after I die, what's the purpose of my life. It's more about how to live happily, how to live calmly, how to have a better life. So that's Buddhism. And then I read about Christianity in the beginning of the Bible. I already felt that the description of God in the Bible is too personified. It doesn't suit what I expect God to be like. For example, in the Bible, the story of Adam alayhi salam, in the Bible, he ate from the apple and God was very angry. Like God was very frustrated. They used words like this. And he regretted creating Adam. I think they said something like this. So I was thinking, how can God regret? He knows what's going to happen in the future. How can God feel bad about a past action? That doesn't make any sense. And there are many incidents like this where God is described like a person, not like a God. So I felt like, maybe, the later people, they changed the words or whatever. And it's not really, I don't think this is the original text from God. I don't think God would be like this. And I respect the people who follow them, but I just didn't find them to be the answer to my questions eventually.
What aspect of the Quran affected you the most? And what is the ayah that touched your heart most?
Studying Islam is like climbing stairs. You keep going up, and there are different platforms, different stage. So in the beginning stage, what struck me the most was sort of like emotional impact. The fact that, and many people experience this, when you read the Quran, it feels as if Quran knows what you're thinking. Like you're reading and you had a thought, and then what's coming after it? The next ayah answers your thought or replies to your thought. So that happened to me many times. I feel like the Quran knows what I'm thinking and is consciously conversing with me, talking with me, specifically to me about what I think. So that's quite impactful. I really felt impressed by the way that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses the language so different from human beings and so unique, yet so beautiful and so impactful. So that's another aspect of the Quran that touched me. And another one is, as I mentioned earlier, the directness or the power of the Quran. Like when you read the Quran, you just know this is not a man talking. A man dare not speak like this, right? It just feels like the speech of God in terms of its tone. I think one of the ayah that really touched me is in Surah Al-Hujurat, Ya ayyuhan nas, إِنَّا خَلَقْنَاكُم مِّن ذَكَرٍ وَأُنثَى وَجَعَلْنَاكُمْ شُعُوبًا وَقَبَائِلَ لِتَعَارَفُوا إِنَّ أَكْرَمَكُمْ عِنْدَ اللَّهِ أَتْقَاكُمْ إِنَّ اللَّهَ عَلِيمٌ خَبِيرٌ. He said, O human beings, indeed we created you from different nations and different tribes, different ethnicities, so that you may know each other. And the most honorable among you are those who have most taqwa, most conscious and pious of you. Indeed, Allah is all-knowing and all-aware. So this ayah touched me the most because I feel like it just fundamentally solves the problem of racism and bigotry and any form of conflict between different people, cultural conflict or whatever, because there's only one standard for gauging your honor, and this standard, taqwa, is hidden. Only Allah knows, and you may know a little bit of it. So that really touched me, and there are many other ayat.
When you look at Chinese people, there are more than 1 billion people who need this dawah, who need to hear about Prophet ﷺ. I want to ask you, suppose that there was a chance for you to speak all non-Muslims in China. All of them are hearing you right now. What would you like to say?
Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salam ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. So my fellow Chinese people, my people of my land, of my blood, I would like to invite you to think about the meaning of life and the purpose of life and what's going to happen after we die. These are important questions, because without answering these questions, our life is in vain and it doesn't accomplish anything. And in the end, you will lose all the things you gather in this world. They will not go with you, and you will feel a sense of regret if you dedicated all of your life to the temporary possessions and temporary projects in this life. So I would like to invite you to at least start thinking about the purpose of life and to look for answers. Start exploring and try to find the answer. And I would like to inform you of my belief, which is not something that I came up with, but it's something that many prophets and messengers in our belief in history who came to different nations and conveyed this message that we are created by one single creator who is merciful, who is wise, and who is powerful, and who promised us that after this life we will be resurrected and we will be judged, and the good people will go to heaven, that is entirely and eternally happy place, and people will be busy with enjoyment, and it's peaceful. And this creator is merciful, and he wants us to go to heaven. He wants us to live this happy and peaceful life. And he has offered us the answer to this afterlife. And he has offered us an example, by these prophets and messengers, especially the last prophet Muhammad, to show us how to live an accomplished life, how to live a life that is happy and fulfilled, and also lead to real success in the hereafter. So you may not necessarily believe these things, but I'm inviting you to at least think about them and get to know these beliefs of Islam. And hopefully, if you are a sincere person and if you're honest to your heart, I am quite certain that you will find it in harmony with what you already believe. You will find it in harmony with what you already know in your heart, in the deepest sense of your nature. And I invite you after that to accept Islam and to live the life according to the example given by Prophet Muhammad, who is really the best of mankind. If you look at his life, if you read about his biography, you will see that he is indeed the most honorable and the most righteous and the most virtuous person. And I hope one day we will be brothers, and our tie will be stronger than the tie of blood. Tie will be stronger than the tie of land. It will be a tie of faith. And this tie will make us brothers, and we will help each other live this life peacefully and happily, and enter the eternally peaceful life in the hereafter together. So embark on this journey and ask God to guide you. Even if you believe there's a possibility that there's a higher being who knows what you're thinking and who created the world, even if you acknowledge this possibility, ask him, call upon him. He hears you, he knows what you want, and he will guide you. And when he guides you, you will find the truth, no matter how many difficulties there are. So embark on this journey, and may Allah, may the Creator guide us all towards the truth and towards the best way of life. Ameen.
It was so nice to meet you. You have a good story. Inshallah, you will gather all the Muslims in China together without drinking a tea from the officials, inshallah.